My friends, in this past year, 2012, the Jewish family lost many precious souls. Some of them household names, many less well known, yet each of them made special contributions of their own and touched the lives of many of us. And so as we close out the year together, we remember many of them in this moment of sacred memory. We begin by remembering two beloved rabbis, Rabbi Yosef Shalom Eliashiv, a rabbinic authority respected by hundreds of thousands of Jews all over the world, as this generation's top rabbinic scholar whose knowledge and understanding of complex elements of Jewish religious law were unparalleled. And in unprecedented fashion, Rabbi Eliashiv's decisions were accepted by virtually all of the various Haredi communities. And Rabbi Jack Cohen, one of world Jewry's most creative rabbis, who headed Mordechai Kaplan's Jewish Reconstructionist Foundation and was the third rabbi to serve Kaplan's Reconstructionist Synagogue in Manhattan, the SAJ, the Society for the Advancement of Judaism. Jack Cohen made Aliyah in the early 1960s, where he served Judaism in Israel for decades. And on a personal note, Jack Cohen was a dear friend of my mother and father, and was the rabbi at the SAJ when I became a bar mitzvah there. From the world of politics and public service, Joseph Weisberger, who served as the Chief Justice for the state of Rhode Island from 1993 until his retirement in 2000. Seymour Jerome Schulman, a highly respected civil engineer who became planning commissioner for Westchester County and served as the mayor of White Plains, New York in the 1990s. Susan Weiner, who in 1991 became the first woman mayor of Savannah, Georgia. Jerry Finkelstein, a two-term Manhattan Borough president in the 1980s, who was very involved in Democratic and Republican politics. Finkelstein was appointed by President Kennedy to be the chairman of the Fine Arts Gift Committee of the National Cultural Center, which would become the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. And Senator Arlen Specter, a major political figure in Washington for more than 4 decades. Pennsylvania's longest-serving U.S. Senator, he was a highly respected Republican for his opposition to President Nixon during the Watergate scandal, and was a tireless crusader on behalf of the State of Israel in the U.S. Senate. From the world of business, Marvin Traub, who served as the CEO and president of Bloomingdale's for 22 years. Arnold Shepard Greenberg, the co-founder of the extremely successful brand of tea and juice drinks, Snapple. And Murray Isaac Linder, the man who brought bagels to all of America, building his father's small Connecticut bakery, Lender's Bagels, into a national brand. From the world of sports, Herbie Kronowitz, an American middleweight boxer who fought in the ring in the 1940s and who then became one of boxing's most highly regarded referees for nearly 30 years. Art Modell, who gained fame as the owner of the Cleveland Browns football team from 1961 to 1995, and the Baltimore Ravens football team from 1996 to 2004. And Art Heyman, one of the greatest Jewish college basketball stars of all time, who during his senior year at Duke was named the Associated Press's National Player of the Year and was the NCAA tournament's most outstanding player, despite Duke's not making the tournament final after losing a semifinal in the Final Four. Heyman was then selected first in the 1963 NBA draft by the New York Knicks, had an outstanding rookie season, and played professional basketball until 1970. From the world of science, Jerome Philip Horowitz, globally renowned for creating many successful treatments for cancer and for synthesizing AZT, which revolutionized the treatment of HIV and which literally has given life to many AIDS patients. Daniel Weinreb was a computer scientist and programmer who co-founded Symbolics software that helped establish the Lisp environment, which changed how databases are used. Leonard Solomon Lerman, most noted for developing a technique used to separate DNA molecules, which shaped much of science's understanding of how drugs and mutagens interact with DNA. Paul Kurtz, known as the father of secular humanism, a term he popularized. A professor of philosophy, Kurtz was co-chair of the International Humanist and Ethical Union. And Brad Schwiddock, who became one of this country's most vocal advocates of organ transplants after experiencing a liver transplant not once but twice, the second liver coming from his wife, Carol Rubin Schwiddock, who remarkably turned out to be a perfect match and who gave half of her pristine liver to her husband to extend his life. We also remember Israelis whom the Jewish people lost in 2012. Brazilian-born David Resnick, one of Israel's most celebrated modern architects, who was awarded the Israel Prize in Architecture for his creations as a town planner. Romanian-born Itamar Singer, who became the leading Hittitologist, for which he was awarded Israel's prestigious Emet Prize, given for excellence in academic and professional achievements. Iraqi-born Eliyahu Navi, who began a public career in Israel in 1947 and served as the mayor of Beersheba from 1963 to 1986. Israeli Sabra, Amos Hacham, the first winner of the International Bible Contest in 1958, who would go on to become a prominent Bible scholar and editor of the Dot Mikra Bible commentary. And Sabra Avraham Avigdorov, a member of the Palmach and the recipient of Israel's highest military decoration, the Hero of Israel Award, for destroying 2 Bren machine gun positions on March 17, 1948, in pre-state Palestine. Avigdorov was seriously wounded in that action and was actually pronounced dead by a local doctor. He ultimately devoted his life to visiting wounded Israeli veterans to show them that one could still live a good life after sustaining injuries of war. Israeli Sabra, General Avraham Bren Adan, who joined the Palmach in 1943 and was a company commander in the Negev during the War of Independence, and is the soldier depicted in the famous photograph of an Israeli raising an ink flag claiming the capture of Eilat from the Jordanians. Becoming a career soldier, Adan led forces in the 56 Sinai Campaign, the Six-Day War of 1967, and after suffering heavy casualties during the first days of the 1973 Yom Kippur War, led his unit across the Suez Canal into Egyptian territory and ultimately surrounded the Egyptian Third Army. Hungarian-born Leah Gottlieb, who made Aliyah with her husband in 1949 after surviving World War II, to become Israel's premier designer of swimwear through her company Gotex, the leading Israeli brand outside of Israel, exporting to 80 countries. Among those who wore her world-renowned strapless one-piece bathing suits were Diana, Prince of Wales, Spain's Queen Sofia, Elizabeth Taylor, Brooke Shields, and Nancy Kissinger. In 2005, Leah Gottlieb was voted one of the 200 greatest Israelis up to that time. Ben-Zion Netanyahu, a major scholar of Jewish and Israeli history and the father of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Ben-Zion was a professor at both Cornell University and Jerusalem's Hebrew University. Born in Warsaw, Poland, his family made Aliyah in 1920 to settle in Jerusalem and Ben-Sion specialized in the golden age of Jewish history in Spain. And former Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir, one of the founding fathers of the State of Israel. Born in Poland, Shamir came to Israel at the age of 20 in 1915 and was a major leader of the Stern Gang, one of the more militant underground Jewish armies that defended Jewish communities from Arab attacks and fought the British in an attempt to win Jewish statehood. After the War of Independence, Shamir served in the Mossad and then entered politics as part of the Likud opposition led by Menachem Begin. Shamir served 2 terms as prime minister, restoring diplomatic relations between Israel and several dozen African, Asian, and other countries, and was responsible for bringing 14,000 Ethiopian Jews to Israel in the clandestine airlift known as Operation Solomon. Shamir also restored diplomatic relations with the Soviet Union. And speaking of Jews who have made a special contribution to the Jewish people, we also remember Ilan Steinberg, a true Jewish leader in every sense of the term, whom we were fortunate enough to have many times on Shalom TV, and who passed away at the much too young age of 59, just hours before Passover this year, leaving a wonderful legacy as executive director of the World Jewish Congress, after which he held an emeritus title until his passing. Ilan gave new life, new ideas, and new dignity to the WJC, and was unafraid of going after Swiss banks, European governments, and others to get restitution for Holocaust survivors and their families. From the world of journalism, Arthur Oakes Punch Sulzberger, the famous publisher of the New York Times and chairman of its board. In the 1960s, Sulzberger built a large news-gathering staff at the Times, and in 1972 won a Pulitzer Prize for publishing the Pentagon Papers. R. Peter Strauss, the courageous broadcast pioneer and president of WMCA Radio in New York City, one of the first telephone talk stations in the country, and the first to voice editorial opinion on the air. With a profound social conscience, Peter Strauss and his wife Ellen Sulzberger Strauss created WMCA's Call for Action, an ombudsman organization in which the public could call with grievances against city agencies and private companies, and if there was no satisfaction, on-air hosts would take offenders to task, a technique especially helpful to citizens with housing complaints in the 5 boroughs of New York. Strauss, who as a B-18 pilot flew 35 bombing missions over Germany in World War II, was also responsible for the lawsuit that resulted in the 1964 U.S. Supreme Court decision upholding the democratic principle of one man, one vote. A lifelong member of the Democratic Party, Strauss left WMCA to become the director of Voice of America under President Jimmy Carter. And on a personal note, I was enormously influenced by R. Peter Strauss, who gave me my first opportunity in professional broadcasting, hiring me as editorial director and director of public affairs for WMCA Radio, a position I held for 7 years and which began me on my own journey that ultimately led to the creation of Shalom TV. And Mike Wallace, a broadcasting legend who, along with Edward R. Murrow, may well be the greatest of all television journalists, known for his acerbic and tenacious interviewing style and for his long association as the lead journalist of CBS's 60 Minutes. Born Myron Leon Wallace, he interviewed a wide range of prominent newsmakers during his illustrious 60-year career. From the world of entertainment, culture, and the arts, Steve Franken, a wonderful character actor who appeared on practically every prominent television show in the 1960s, drama or comedy, and who's perhaps best remembered for playing Chatsworth Osborne Jr., the wealthy and snobbish friend of Dobie Gillis. Alan Kirshenbaum, an American television producer and writer who worked on the sitcom Everybody Loves Raymond. Alan was the son of stand-up Catskills comic Freddie Roman. Alan Kriegsman, an American dance critic who was the first to ever win the Pulitzer Prize for reporting on dance. Etta Cohen, one of America's greatest teachers of violin, who wrote a series of books on her own method of violin instruction. Florence Warren, who in occupied Paris during World War II was the French theater's Ginger Rogers, sharing the stage with the great performers of the time, including Edith Piaf and Marie Chevalier. And often in the audience were Nazi officers who did not know that Miss Warren was secretly Jewish and hiding Jews in her Paris apartment while smuggling guns to the French resistance, all at great risk to her own life. Bernard "Bernie" Bierman, an American composer of popular songs who became part of Tin Pan Alley, writing for such greats as Frank Sinatra, Sarah Vaughan, and Billy Eckstine. Art Ginsberg, originally a butcher, who would become a best-selling author of 52 cookbooks and one of the first popular chefs on television, appearing for more than 30 years as Mr. Food. Ulla Grossbard, a talented film and stage director from Belgium, who was Tony nominated for both The Subject Was Roses and American Buffalo, and who directed movies starring such film legends as Dustin Hoffman, Patricia Neal, Robert De Niro, and Meryl Streep. Irving Fine, an Emmy Award-winning television and film producer and the longtime manager of television icons Jack Benny and George Burns. Gerald Starr, a writer, professor, and social activist whose work focused on peace and conflict resolution, and who founded Citizens for Independent Public Broadcasting in an effort to bring greater diversity to PBS and NPR. Amos Vogel, who with his wife Marcia in 1947 created the landmark avant-garde film society Cinema 16 for moviegoers thirsty for films they couldn't see anywhere else. Vogel also co-founded the New York Film Festival at Lincoln Center. Eve Arnold, born Eve Cohen, one of the world's leading photojournalists, who captured on film many of the iconic figures who shaped the second half of the 20th century, while also documenting the lives of the poor and dispossessed throughout the globe. To many of her fans, Arnold's most memorable photographs were the images of Marilyn Monroe shot on the set of The Misfits in 1961. Andrew Breitbart, a Hollywood blogger who helped spearhead the conservative movement and brought political conservatism to web journalism. Robert Sherman, known as Disney's Jewish songwriter, who was responsible for some of the most beloved of all Disney songs, including the entire score for the movie Mary Poppins, for which he won both an Oscar and a Grammy, and the classic Disneyland song It's a Small World After All. Maurice Sendak, a wonderful author and illustrator of children's literature, best known for his 1963 book Where the Wild Things Are, and for collaborating with Isaac Bashevis Singer to illustrate Singer's Zlata the Goat. Vidal Sassoon, perhaps the most famous hairdresser of his era, the architect of the wash-and-go haircut, and the first to create a line of hair products, salons, and hairdressing schools. Judith Crist, a film critic who was part of the Today Show and was the first full-time female critic for a major American newspaper, the New York Herald Tribune. Born Judith Klein, she was the founding film critic at New York Magazine and became most known to Americans as the TV critic for TV Guide. Nora Ephron, the extraordinarily talented author, playwright, and three-time Oscar-nominated film writer who wrote of human relationships with a dazzling sense of biting humor and exquisite insight, on display in her romantic comedies such as When Harry Met Sally, for which Ephron won the Academy Award, Sleepless in Seattle, and the autobiographical Heartburn, which told the story of her failed marriage to Carl Bernstein. Nora Ephron also wrote the movie Silkwood, and two of her books are classics for women of her age: I Feel Bad About My Neck and Other Thoughts on Being a Woman, and I Remember Nothing and Other Reflections. Richard Adler, one of the most gifted of all composers and lyricists, who co-wrote with Jerry Ross such Broadway musical greats as Pajama Game and Damn Yankees. Adler also produced President Kennedy's Birthday Party Spectacular, where Marilyn Monroe sang her legendary Happy Birthday, Mr. President, and he was responsible for writing the long-running car rental jingle, Let Hertz Put You in the Driver's Seat. Hal David, a lyricist best known for his collaborations with composer Burt Bacharach, writing some of the most enduring songs in American popular music, including Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, This Guy's in Love with You, and I'll Never Fall in Love Again. David's film work includes the Oscar-nominated title songs for What's New Pussycat and Alfie, and together with Bacharach, Hal David was awarded the 2011 Gershwin Prize for Popular Song, bestowed by the Library of Congress, the first time a songwriting team was given that honor. Marvin Hamlish, a giant in the American music world and one of only 11 individuals to have won an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony, and along with Richard Rodgers, is the only person to have ever won those 4 prizes and a Pulitzer Prize. And Hamlish also won 2 Golden Globes. In 1973, Hamlish won 2 Academy Awards for the title song and the score for the motion picture The Way We Were, and also won an Academy Award for the adaptation score of The Sting with its theme song, The Entertainer. And in 1975, he wrote the Broadway musical A Chorus Line, for which he won both a Tony Award and a Pulitzer Prize. And Jack Klugman, one of the most beloved of all American stars of stage, film, and television, who undoubtedly will be best remembered for his role as Oscar in the Neil Simon television series The Odd Couple, which he played opposite Tony Randall. Jack Klugman was also in the film version of 12 Angry Men, was in 4 episodes of The Twilight Zone, won an Emmy Award for guest starring in an episode of The Defenders, and played the Jewish father in the movie Goodbye Columbus. And for 8 seasons, Klugman starred as a medical examiner in the series Quincy, which he used to help influence medical legislation in America. And finally, we remember those who died al Kiddush Hashem, sanctifying the name of God. And in addition to remembering all those in Israel who lost their lives to terrorism in 2012, we also remember the 5 Israelis killed along with the Bulgarian bus driver in a suicide bombing attack on a bus carrying Israelis at Sarajevo Airport in Burgas, Bulgaria. The victims: Meir Harush, Yitzhak Holangi, Amir Menashe, Elior Price, and Kochava Shriki. And we remember Rabbi Jonathan Sandler, who gave his life trying, unsuccessfully, to shield his 2 sons, Gabriel and Aryeh Sandler, from a Jew-hating, self-styled Al-Qaeda terrorist, who then chased down and murdered Miriam Mocenigo, the 8-year-old daughter of the school principal, all shot to death at the Ozar HaTorah school in Toulouse in southern France. And we remember 6-year-old Noah Posner, described as a rambunctious little maverick, inquisitive and smart as a whip, who loved his family, his parents, his sibling, and especially his twin sister Ariel, and who was the youngest of 20 first graders murdered at the Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut. And for every one of those whom we lost in 2012, the words of our tradition resonate within us. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. May the memory of the righteous forever be a blessing.